My wife and I recently did one of the most challenging things we've done, by accident. We had planned to go on a 5.5-mile hike up to this lake that sounded really beautiful. However, we didn't realize that the trailhead for the 5.5-mile hike was up a road that you could only get to if you had a Jeep or some other kind of off-road vehicle. We couldn't make it in our 4-door sedan, so we had to park at a lower trailhead and then hike up to that one. So we parked at the lower trailhead and hiked over 2 miles just to get to that initial trailhead. So round trip, on accident, we ended up hiking over 10 miles. And the entire way to the lake was rocky and uphill. We also had our 2 dogs with us, one of whom can only walk maybe 2 or 3 miles and is 23 pounds. So we took turns carrying all that extra weight on our back for most of the trip. But the views were so worth it. Now, like I said, this was one of the most strenuous things we've ever done. Our legs from making the climb uphill, our shoulders from carrying the dog, even just our lungs from trying to get enough air at 12,000 feet of elevation. The thing was, though, that we couldn't give up. The whole reason we started the hike was to reach the lake. We had to do it. And then once we got to the lake, we had to hike the 5 miles back down to our car. Otherwise, we couldn't get home. There was no option to give up. There's not a lot in life that forces you into that kind of situation. Most of the time, when something gets hard, you have the choice to either give it up, take a break, sit down and rest, call for help. You have some way to make it easier. There's very few times in life where you just don't have that option. And so this situation made me think of an important life lesson. The hike reminded me of the times I ran a half marathon. Now, before I ran my first half, the most miles I had ever done at any time was 8. And I regularly took 3 or 4 mile runs, maybe even going up to 6 or 7 on the weekends. I figured I could already run that many miles. What's a few more, right? But on that half marathon, when I reached the 9 and 10 mile markers, it started to get really hard. I wanted to give up. My legs were tired, I was really hungry, I just wanted to sit down and take a break. But if I gave up, what was I gonna do? Sit down on the curb until I had the motivation to walk the rest of it? Just keep walking for 2 hours and finish way later than everybody else? There was only really one choice, and that was just to keep going, to get to the end. This wasn't ever going to be over until I crossed the finish line. So every time I wanted to stop, to take a break, to give up, I thought of that there was no choice but to cross that finish line. And so the important life lesson that I learned both from the hike and from the half marathon, one I've also seen kind of in other aspects of my life, is that there's certain things in life that you can't not do. And often those are the things most worth pursuing. At the end of the hike, my body was ready to collapse. But the views of the lake, the pictures we got along the way, the memories we shared, and maybe most of all, that feeling of relief when we finally got to sit down in the car made it all worth it. It was that feeling of pride that kind of swelled up in my wife and I, knowing we had just done something so difficult. And with the half marathon, it was the exhilaration of crossing the finish line and my legs feeling like they were going to give out, but getting that medal around my neck, knowing that I had just done something really difficult, really worth doing. It made it all worth it. With both the hike and the half marathon, I wanted to give up, but I couldn't. I had to keep going, had no other choice. But when I got to the end, it was so worth it. And that's the way I think it is with most things in life worth pursuing. I think we should all strive to find the thing or things that give us purpose, the things that we can't not do. The thing that no matter how hard it gets, no matter how long or how difficult the journey is, you can't give up. It's easy to let life pass you by, to not find the thing that you can't afford not to do. I've seen it in my own life. In high school, I really liked international relations, politics, other languages, and so I thought I wanted to be a diplomat of some sort. Then when I got to college, I was a business major, but after taking a few classes, I kind of realized that the life of finance and banking and those kinds of disciplines weren't the things that I couldn't not do. Of course, I could do them. I studied them, majored in them, but I also could not do them. And I think it's easy to go about life that way, to get an education in something you can do, to find a job in something you can do, to find a house that you can afford, to live a life that you can do, instead of focusing on the things that you can't not do. And of course, the thing that sets them on fire isn't necessarily going to be everyone's job. It just doesn't always work out that way. Sometimes it's just a hobby. For me, it's just a hobby. But I think regardless of whether it's your job or just something you do on the side, finding that thing you can't not do is really important to leading a fulfilled life. Because that sense of achievement, when you finally do that thing, when you reach the finish line, when you get to the lake, when whatever you've put in years and years and hours of training to do finally pays off, that is one of the most rewarding feelings. It took me years to find something I couldn't not do, but when I finally got a camera, when I started making videos, when I sat down and started writing and editing and the whole process, I knew I had found it. And I know I found it because when I spend some time away, when there's times when I can't make videos or work on videos, I can't wait to get back to it. I feel this compulsion almost to get back to it as soon as I'm able to. It's the thing I most look forward to when I've had a busy week with no free time or I've been out of town on vacation. It's one of those things that I love so much that makes me feel fulfilled that I just can't afford not to do in my life. And thanks to a recent hike, I've realized how special it is to find something like that and how important it is to keep running toward it. So keep going, keep trying new things, keep pushing until you find that one thing that, no matter how hard the journey gets, no matter how many times you want to give up, you keep going because you can't afford not to. Thanks for watching.